Until you've walked a mile in their shoes, you'll never quite know what it's like to have someone else's heart beating in your chest. April is Donate Life Month, and we'd like to welcome Jean Shimandle, heart transplant recipient, who's continued to honor the young man whose donation has given him life. It is so great to talk to you right now.
Thanks, Leyla. It's a pleasure being here.
Can you tell us a bit about your health journey leading up to your transplant?
I waited for 12 years to get the heart. I was diagnosed in 2005 with congestive heart failure. And that was a horrible moment. As a matter of fact, it was a friend of mine, a cardiologist friend of mine, who walked in and said, "Gene, I got bad news." This is after 3 days of testing. And he came in and said, "I got to get you on a heart transplant list, my friend." And
so you just knew something was wrong. And you went to the doctor, and then they dropped this news on you. And then what did you think? Did you ever realize that there would be a heart out there for you one day?
I had no symptoms prior to that. I was living a magnificent life. I was a paramedic. I was working in the emergency department at the trauma center here in Cleveland. And from there, I got to teach the third-year medical students the advanced cardiac life support training programs. I did that for 18 years. I was as healthy as I have ever been. And I'd had a 3-hour workout with my son the day before I had awakened with shortness of breath. And I went in to teach my class, my lecture, and some of the students came up to me afterwards and said, "You're always telling us about the symptoms of heart problems, and your shortness of breath is scaring us. Would you let us drive you over to the clinic?" So I let them. And after 3 days of testing, that's when my friend, the cardiologist, came in and said, "Got bad news."
Oh, gosh. Fast forward 12 years. You found out that a heart donor had become available. And
Correct.
Can you tell me about that donor?
I didn't know anything about the donor up until I met 6 months after the transplant. I met my donor's family. It's all anonymous. You don't get to know who it is that's donating.
But we later come to find out that he was a young man who just left the DMV with his new driver's license, 3 hours no less, died in a car crash.
Yes.
And so the donation was made, you had the surgery, and here you are today. So when we come back after the break, I just want to talk about the things that you've done to honor your donor. We're going to do that in 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. We've been chatting with Jean Shimandle. He is a heart transplant recipient who has continued to honor the young man's life whose life was cut too short, but his heart has gone on to beat inside of Jean's chest. And Jean, how have you been honoring this young man?
I met Cody's family, and they told me all about Cody Joseph Stiebel. Cody was 20 years old. He had had an accident very shortly after receiving his driver's license. He drove into an intersection that he wasn't familiar and was quickly life-flighted to the Cleveland Clinic. And I got the call 3 days after that and said, "Gene, we think we finally found you a heart." I'd waited for 12 years for that phone call. And when I hung up the phone, my wife said, "I was expecting you to be a lot happier after that phone call." I said, "Well, I am happy." I said, "But I know that there's a family suffering a real tragedy right now." So when I got to meet them.
Can you just, let's talk about that for just a quick moment here, Jean, because that is a profound realization, isn't it? How do you reconcile the joy of knowing your life is being saved by this organ, yet someone is losing a loved one in the process?
I had, as a paramedic, I'd responded 162 times to people's homes where their loved one had lost their life. And we were trying to rescue them and bring them back. And we weren't very successful at that most of the time. So I knew exactly what it was that the family was going through.
Yeah.
I'd been there side by side with him when they'd lost a loved one. So I knew there was a tragedy.
So you were a little practiced in the sorrows, certainly, that these tragedies can bring. But in honor of Cody, you have gone on a tremendous hike all the way from your home to Washington, D.C. and back again. How many miles, how many days did it take?
Well, the first journey I started on my birthday. I started on April 11th, and I started from the Cleveland Clinic Foundation, where I had the transplant. And I walked 357 miles, 13 miles a day, every day for the next 27 days. So I arrived on May 8th, my heartiversary. So absolutely magnificent when I got into Washington. It was marvelous.
That's fantastic. And how old are you today?
I will be 65 next week.
65 next week. Well, happy birthday to you. You look fantastic. Real quick, with just about 10 seconds left, what is the message you would like our viewers to get from this in order to then become donors themselves if they haven't already?
I walked to Washington, D.C. with two ideas in mind. The first is increase organ donation awareness, like we're doing this month. And second was to have a national honor place, a memorial, if you would, for donors and recipients to be housed within the Smithsonian institutions. I'm working on that at this very moment.
It's a beautiful tribute. Jean, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Leyla.
We are back after this.